Hey everybody, it's Alain Tovim. Good afternoon. Shalom lakulam. Welcome everyone. Back with you for the newbie schnoobie Hebrew alphabet beginner reading pre-module. We're going to be covering lesson 5 today and learning 4 more new consonants. And I wanted to remind everybody the reason why I'm blitzing through these lessons is everything that I have done in creating the Yarash digital subscription. It was with the intention of getting people up and running as fast as we possibly could, reasonably speaking, so that you're not like 2 years down the road, I don't know my alphabet. And so we want to expedite things. And I find the sooner you can get people actually reading Hebrew, the better off it's going to be. They're going to be really encouraged, and it's going to fuel the fire for them to continue in their Hebrew studies. And you may hear in the background there is some nice music playing, some singing. You may or may not hear that, but my family's having some worship time upstairs, which is awesome. I'm a big proponent of worship. That's actually one of the modules in the Yarash digital subscription. There's a couple modules that would come under the banner of worship. There's one module that deals with, I teach people how to chant their way through the Jewish prayer book, the Siddur, and there's another one devoted to Messianic Jewish and traditional Jewish worship songs. And so that is there for your enjoyment for those that have purchased the subscription, the standard or the gold. All right, that being said, let's dive into the lesson here today. Lesson 5, Yod, Kaf, Lamed, Mem. I'm going to start with the Yod. So the Yod is number 10 in the Hebrew alphabet. And it looks like a hand. Yod is the Hebrew word in the Hebrew scriptures for hand. And the pictographic meaning behind this one, it's a hand. And you can kind of see it's kind of like if you cup your hand and hold it up in the light, it would look very much like a yod. Yod is pronounced like the Y in yard. It sits up high in relation to the other consonants, sort of like an overstuffed or oversized apostrophe. It has a numerical value of 10. Here's our fuller slide representing the yod. With your yod here, we have the template there. I remembered the word I used, template. So it looks like a one-step process for yod, and it is just here and then down. You'll notice the baseline here. So all the other letters, most of them rest right upon the baseline. There are some occurrences, 2 or 3, where letters can dip beneath the baseline. When that happens, I'm going to alert you to the fact, because it really matters when you're doing your practicing. It matters how you form letters, and if you're not forming them correctly, it's like people are going to have a hard time reading what you're writing, but you certainly don't want to learn wrong. And so yad, I've mentioned, means hand in Hebrew, and this would be the Hebrew word for yad. And there is an actual ornate silver pointer that's used when people ascend to the bima to chant from the Torah scrolls, the Torah. Read the Torah on the bima. It's a raised platform in the synagogue, in the shul or the temple, and it's called the yad. So it's very decorative. I actually have a yad here. I'll try to just get this out, show you. I don't know if this is gonna, I guess you can see it a little bit there. Oh, there it is. Okay, it's in front of my face. That's the yad. You'll notice that there's a little hand on the end with a finger pointing. And the finger pointing, that's the exact place at which that would touch the Torah scroll, or if not touching it, held gently over it. Human hands are not supposed to touch the scrolls, the inside of the scrolls, according to Jewish law. All right, so that is Yod, 10th letter of the alphabet. So let us advance the slide to the next letter. We have the 11th letter here of the alphabet, and this is the letter Kaf. Try saying that. Kaf, not cough. Kaf. So Kaf, you may notice here, I usually have 1 letter represented, and occasionally 2. Why do I have 3 here for the Kaf? There's good reason. Number 1, the first placard on this side of the page has a dagesh. So this is, in fact, part of the Begad Kafat family. When it has no dagesh, as in this one here, that's pronounced with that hard sound from the back of the throat, guttural sound, chaf, chaf. You try that. And then the dagesh is a dagesh, lene, a light dagesh, and it causes the chaf to become kaf, kaf. So it takes it out of the back of the throat, and up a little bit higher in the mouth. So you have two sounds, one letter, but then we reach the third letter here at the end here, and this is also a kaf, and this is known as a kaf sophite. So kaf sophite, the sophite forms are called final forms because there are certain letters when they appear right at the very end of a word, for whatever strange reason, they take on a completely different shape, but it's the same letter. It's the same letter, it's the same name, it's the same sound. So in this case, the kaf sophite has a dagesh. They don't always. A lot of times the kaf will have what looks like a shva down a little bit lower, though. There's various ways this can be represented. But when it just has the dagesh alone, it will have that harder sound, the ka sound. So let's just read what it says. Kaf and kaf sophite are pronounced like the K in kite, and they have no dagesh. They are pronounced from the back of the throat, similar to how the het sounds, and I've just demonstrated that, so I'm not going to repeat that. I'm going to go on to the next slide here. Okay, here's our kaf, and down at the bottom we have a template in the left, and this one is another very simple letter to draw. You start up high, come across for the horizontal, come down for the vertical, and then back across again in the opposite direction. And you get your kaf, or I should say your chaf. If we were to draw a dagesh in it, it would be a kaf. Here we have a picture of a crown, and in Hebrew, you'd say keter, keter. This is actually should have a dagesh if that is done correctly. So it's not cheter, it's keter. Keter is crown in Hebrew. Let's move on to the next letter. 12th letter of the alphabet is the letter lamed. Lamed. Lamed is pronounced like the L in the word little, or some would say little. It has the pictographic meaning of a shepherd's staff. So in ancient times, though it looks slightly different than that, this letter represented something. It represented the shepherd's staff. And pictographic meanings in Hebrew, there's a lot of teachings these days on pictograph, and I'm not gonna come out as a strong proponent or come against them. It's interesting, but just remember that when these letters had pictographic meanings, there are also thousands of other symbols that had meanings, and so we're left with 22 letters in the alphabet. We don't have thousands of letters, and those letters came to mean something entirely different. They came to mean sounds and not so much pictures, because that phase of Hebrew language development had things that passed on beyond that phase. Now, some people may take real offense if you've spent years studying pictographic meanings and you're super invested. I'm certainly not wanting to be polarizing in the things that I'm saying, but I do have an opinion on it. And that is my opinion. And so I'm not getting into a lot of the pictographic meanings. I just mentioned them in passing, just as a point of interest. I'm also not giving the numerical values of every single one, because I am wanting this to be a brief course in the alphabet and not a really long one, to keep with our goals of getting to read Hebrew quick. All right, next placard. All right, next placard. All right, so let's go down to our tracing template here. Begin up high with a lamed. If there is a line on paper, the line would be here. So you can see that the lamed actually starts being formed above the line. So you'd start here, go over here, and then come down at a diagonal to the baseline. And that would be your lamed. Got a picture here of a heart. So in the Hebrew language, Lave would be the short word, the short form. Lave would be the short form of saying heart, and then levav would be the long form. Some words have, longer forms. So one form has just one bet, and the other one has two. So it's lave and levav. And I should say it has a vet because there's no degesh in that letter, making it a hard B sound. So it's lave, lave. Okay, advancing on now to the final letter we're going to cover in the lesson today. 13th letter of 22, and this is the mem. Can you say mem? Mem is pronounced like the M in the English word magnet, or we could say mom. Mem. Mem has two different forms. This would be the normal form of the letter, and when it appears as the last consonant in any Hebrew word, it is called mem sophit, and it comes at the end of the word, so it has a special different form, a sophit form. You probably agree those look quite a bit different. But just to remind yourself, though they look different, they're not. They're the same letter. They make the same sound. And you just need to memorize the regular mem and then the sophit form. Now, I've spelled that out right here, where the second sentence takes a different form whenever it appears as the last letter. So you'd say mem and then mem sophit. Okay, last placard of the evening. So we have different templates at the bottom, and I believe I failed to include a template for whatever the last letter is that had a sophit form. I think it might have been the kaf, and my apologies for that. But these all have final forms. All of the sophit letters have final forms, and I have included in this one a template showing you how to trace and then write your own mem sophit and mem. Let's start with the mem. So a two-step process. We start here with a little line, and then we pick our writing instrument up and start at the baseline and go up like we're going to draw a triangle, come down again to the baseline, and then over, being careful to leave that little space there. And that is mem. And it somewhat looks like a mem, though this one is pointy, and the traditional one that's used in Hebrew Bibles is not. It's rounded. That would be pretty much the only difference, right? In the sophit form, beginning up top here, cross, down. It looks just like a zero, except it's got, what, a little tiny tail on the left-hand side. So that's a real easy one. But just remember, it's not an O, as in the English language. It is a mem sophit, which makes the M sound. The picture here of a tower. Tower in the Hebrew language, you would say migdal. Can you repeat that after me? Migdal, tower. That is a picture of a migdal. Think about the Tower of David in Jerusalem. It's still there. Not the original tower when David lived, but they call it the Tower of David. So that tower is a migdal. So that pretty much covers it for the lesson this evening. So we've covered 4 more letters of the Aleph Bet this evening. Lesson 5 is we've covered the Yod, the Kaf, the Lamed, and the Mem. Kaf has a sophit form, and Mem has a sophit form. So you actually have 6 letters to learn. 6 different shapes, I should say. 4 letters, but 6 shapes. So a little bit extra homework. I want to encourage you, go ahead and print out your practice sheet right inside the Yarash digital subscription module. There'll be a link there. Print that out and do your homework assignment. And when you've completed that, you can practice just making the sounds while you're writing them out. You might want to include some vowels, writing some vowels underneath some of those letters that you're practicing, and get some practice in with your nikadot, with your vowels as well. That will only help you and cannot possibly hurt you. I want to encourage you also to be continuing to go through your vocabulary cards. So I'm going to put the cap on it for this evening. Erev Tov, good evening. Lahitraot. We'll see you later for our next lesson, which will be lesson number 6. We're going to be doing some reading practice. Shalom, shalom.